springs to mind when I ask the question, what's the most important organ involved in singing? Well, many of you may have cried the larynx, of course, but what about the ears? Jono Heale is with me this week to help us understand how the ears work, how we can keep ours safe as teachers, as well as how we can help our singers keep their ears healthy too. He also talks about those important in-ear monitors and how we can help our students find the best ones for them. Jono Heale, can you describe the moment that you realised you had a real interest in being a musician and working in the performance industry?
Yeah, as a child, I grew up around music at home and I wanted to be a drummer, actually. My dad used to listen to Oscar Peterson and the James Last Orchestra, and I was just fascinated in the drums. And he actually put on a production. He worked in amateur dramatics and choirs, actually. And I did get roped into joining a church choir as a young boy. So that's my music education started. But we did Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And they needed somebody to turn the music on for the drummer because I was into drums. And that was it. I wanted to be a drummer. So that's where it started. I played drums at school, but I couldn't get into a band as a drummer because I think in the sort of the 80s or the 70s and 80s, everybody wanted to be a drummer or a rock guitarist. So I couldn't get into any bands as a teenager. So I started playing bass, actually, because I played a bit of guitar. And then when I left school, it went on from that. And then, so that's how my music started. That's all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to play in a band. But my parents, obviously, at 16, when I left school, were like, you need to get a proper job. So I went to work in a factory to do an apprenticeship. So professionally, probably I would say when I first started earning some money I was 21, 21, 22. So that's how it all started.
And how did your journey then move from being a working musician? Finally, you showed mum and dad that being a musician was a real job too, to getting involved in things like ear health and in-ear monitoring.
Okay. After I damaged my hearing, I worked a solid 15 years, gigging, touring, just doing anything really in music. Moved around an awful lot, moved up to Scotland, worked in the studio, then moved back to London, then back into the thick of it in London, and then managed to get some session work with the BBC, which I did for 2 years, which was great, radio, TV. Got a little flat through the Musicians Union, actually helped me find a flat in East London, in Ilford. I was living the dream. Everything was paid for by working in music, this portfolio career as well, a bit of teaching, but I was out playing probably 3 different bands, sessions, studio stuff. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. But I was aware that it was all rock and roll, rock pop sort of stuff, amplified music, that I had whistling in my ears after gigs, or my hearing had gone muffled, but also recreationally going to clubs or going to gigs, that I had this whistling. Of course, didn't have the internet. What's this whistling in my head? What's this? My hearing's gone all muffled. I've come off stage. Everyone who's in the green room or in the dressing room shouting at each other, going, it's a great gig, or how bad was the monitor mix? And then also I'd noticed socially in situations, sort of parties or going to restaurants and bars and stuff, struggling a little bit to focus on what people were saying. I could hear what people were saying, but I couldn't make out what the words were. Anyway, cut a long story short, that the tinnitus would normally go away, which I knew was then tinnitus, or somebody said it's tinnitus, and it goes away after 24 hours, and didn't think anything of it. I thought it was one of those occupational sort of things that you do, didn't really wear any earplugs. Anyway, I had a hearing test because my wife actually at the time was accusing me of selective hearing all the time, and it was, can you just go and get your hearing tested? And I said, this tinnitus is getting worse, and I wasn't sleeping very well. So I went and had a hearing test, and that was it. I thought I did quite well. And then the audiologist said, yes, Mr. Heale, you've got classic noise-induced hearing loss. Have you worked in the aircraft industry? And I said, no, I've worked in music for the last 15 years. And he said, well, you've obviously had that temporary tinnitus and temporary threshold shift, the muffling. I said, yeah. He goes, that's a sign you're damaging your hearing. I was like, okay, I'll dep all my work out. I'll obviously freelance and self-employed. But I'll take a month off and give my ears a rest. And he was like, no, that's it. That's it for the rest of your life. You can't get that back. And I remembered walking out into the high street and going up Marylebone High Street in London and walking along in this kind of like daze of what am I going to do now? Because this is my life. So yeah, I did have a bit of a life crisis, actually affected me quite a lot, that what was I going to do? So I moved away from the live gigging, but that was a turning point for me. And then the education side of things, because I had a degree in music, so I thought maybe I could do more in music education. So I got more involved with that. And then I started working for a national further education music college. And what made me really angry that they were teaching the next generation of music makers and musicians, and they had nothing in the curriculum about hearing health, or even how the ear works, or how sound can affect the ears. And I was like, this is nuts. And I spoke to the management of the college and I was like, this should be embedded into the curriculum. I've damaged my hearing already, but why aren't you? And they're going, what are you talking about? And I was like, you've got hair and beauty at this college, sports science, motor mechanics, bricklaying, occupational health and safety is week 1, term 1. So I was on a bit of a mission then. So that's how it started. And then on a personal note, because of being out of the music industry a little bit and doing stuff more from home, because I could do it online, and I was writing stuff in my studio and sending it down the line, I moved out of London and moved to East Anglia, actually, and then realised how bad my tinnitus was because it was so quiet, especially at night. And then I was at the NEC at a trade show. I was working in trade shows and stuff, music equipment trade shows, again, portfolio career. And a friend of mine said, oh, are you gigging? How's it going? Man, I've got real problems with my ears. I'm getting a bit paranoid about it now. And he said, oh, you should speak to this guy, Andy Shiak at ACS. He makes earplugs for musicians. I was like, get out, what? Earplugs? And he goes, yeah, they turn it down. They've got special earplugs for musicians. I was like, wow. So I met Andy at the NEC 16 years ago, maybe. And he said, oh, I need an agent for East Anglia to sell our products, but you'd have to train up. You'd have to do a British Society of Audiology course. And I was like, yeah, I'm there. So that was I thought I could turn my problems, if you like, into good. So I was on a mission then, really, to raise awareness in music education. That's how it started. I made myself really unpopular. So I was angry at music education. I'd been through the music education system and not been told. I'd worked in music education. I'd worked professionally in the music industry, in 2 years freelance at the BBC, and no one had said, this is an occupational hazard that could change your life, or you could get to a point where you can't do what you do. If your ears don't work, no, neither do you. So yeah, that was the start of it. And then properly was about 10 years ago when Andy took me on full time to do his sort of marketing and comms. And I was on a massive mission then. And then this is a good link here, because just synchronicity or whatever, but through contacts in the Musicians Union, and I was making waves in music education, and people had known that I'd started working for this hearing protection company that was quite well known in the music business. A guy called Nigel Hamilton, who worked for a charity called Help Musicians UK, invited me onto a steering group committee for hearing health for musicians as a musician or ex-musician, and also with my work with ACS. And then from that, developed this program funded by the charity Help Musicians UK, called the Musicians Hearing Health Scheme, which was administered and run by the Musicians Hearing Services, Harley Street Hearing, the Musicians Union, and then ACS as a manufacturer. So it was great, because really professionally, if you work professionally in the music industry now as a musician or DJ, you have got access to audiological consultancy, hearing tests, and good quality hearing protection. Yeah, so that's how I got involved. Yeah. So you couldn't really make it up. It was just one of those things, really. Things just fell into place. That's what I've been doing ever since.
And as you say, you've turned your difficulties and your challenges into something to help other people, and that's now where your main work is.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your symptoms now?
Okay, there's a few things. One of them I'm wearing around my neck, actually, which is a new thing. So initially it was listening to the radio at night quietly. It was more time when I was tired, but more so in the evenings. So I said I've moved out to East Anglia, and it was really quiet, and it was this thing whistling all the time. I tried hearing aids with a tone generator, but I didn't really need hearing aids all the time. It was more just in social situations in terms of the loss. And we can talk about where the loss is in the ear because of how the ear works in a moment, maybe. So it was auditory distraction, really. But I tried Tai Chi, I tried meditation, all sorts of things. and it doesn't go away. It's as the tinnitus clinic. I got referred to a tinnitus clinic, had an MRI and all of these sort of things and other tests, and they were like, no, it's music induced damage. It can They could tell that's what it was. It's like a bad back. It's never going to really go away. It can rear its ugly head every now and again. He says, sitting up, correcting his posture, and I had a bad back as well as a bass player, lugging equipment around and bad posture, holding guitars around your neck for hours. But yeah, managing it really, or auditory distraction. And there's a few good things. There's some apps now you can get, obviously Spotify or whatever, you can stream various noises. Yeah, rainforest noises, Baroque viol music is quite good. I find that I used to listen to quite a lot of that. But obviously, if you're sleeping with a partner, obviously that can be a bit of a problem. The British Tinnitus Association or Tinnitus UK also recommend products you can have under your pillow, auditory distraction. But I'm now using, actually, this is not an advert, by the way, but there's this little unit here that creates white noise very quietly. You tune it to the frequency of your tinnitus, and you just wear it around your neck. People can't hear it, but when it's quiet, it masks the tinnitus, really. And that's been really good. So that's quite a good thing. So masking it, auditory distraction. But I find in terms, exercise, I've tried Tai Chi, I've tried all sorts of things. So I think auditory distraction or masking for me is the one. Or as a lot of people say, Jono talks too much. Maybe that's because he's trying to cover up his tinnitus. I tell you. Yeah.
What's that thing called that you wear around your neck?
It's called I could plug it actually. It's called a Tinny Soothe. It's about 350 quid, and it's got different volumes, and you can change the frequency of it. It's got a little speaker, and you can clip it on. You probably can't hear it, but it's just when it's quiet, you just get this white noise. And then there's a little docking station you have next to your bed, and you just plug it in there, it recharges. And that's really good when it's quiet. I find that quite soothing. Yeah, Tinny Soothe does what it says on the tin, really.
Can you help us to understand how the ear works then, so that we can reference it as we continue talking about ear health and in-ear monitors?
Yeah, let me share my screen. It's probably the best thing to do.
For audio listeners, we're just pulling up some slides that Jono's put together for us. So if you want to see those, do head over to our YouTube page so that you can see that for yourself and know what we're referencing. But we'll try to describe everything as much as we can, won't we, Jono? Although you will. You'll do that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is a picture of the ear, the pinna, the outer ear. It's made of cartilage. And the cartilage actually goes all the way down the auditory canal to about the second bend in the ear canal, which is where it goes through the hole in the skull. It continues to grow and change shape for your entire life. There you go. So your ears do change shape. Bit like your nose, actually. But this is the pinna. It's like a sound funnel, really. So the vibrations, sound is vibrations in a gas, really, in air. Sound pressure waves, and this acts like a little funnel to capture those vibrations, and it goes down the auditory canal. With louder sounds, especially low frequency sounds, we do take a lot of those vibrations through our head and through our body as well. They call it conduction, especially with louder, lower frequency sounds, so you can feel it. A bit like music. That's why people like music to be a certain level. They reckon it's really between 94 to 97 decibels, so you can feel the music. Makes you want to dance, makes you want to move. It increases your adrenaline, but also maybe slightly heightens your fight and flight mechanism. It makes you want to move and dance, feel the music, if you like. Anyway, those sound pressure waves go down the auditory canal to the eardrum at the other end, which is a delicate piece of skin, like the skin of a drum, hence its name, the tympanic membrane. And that piece of skin will vibrate as those sound pressure waves hit it. And behind the eardrum, tympanic membrane, so 3 little bone lever system, like a mechanical lever system, which are the smallest bones in the human body, amazingly enough, and they replicate those vibrations in a mechanical system. And actually, by doing that, they increase the amplitude, or if you like, the loudness of those vibrations, but increases the amplitude because it's replicating those vibrations to the end of that system, like a little plunger that goes in and out, replicating those vibrations, a bit like a speaker does in a hi-fi speaker, goes in and out, and replicates those vibrations into a fluid medium of the cochlea in the inner ear, which is a sort of snail looking like organ. It looks like a snail. Basically, it's two tubes filled with fluid, with a membrane running through it, with just under 16,000 sensory hair cells moving in that fluid. When they're disturbed, they create a nerve impulse which goes through the auditory nerve to the auditory cortex in the brain, and that's how we hear. So you couldn't really make this up, really. Vibrations in the gas through a mechanical lever system into a fluid medium, into a nerve impulse, and then that's how you hear. But yeah, it's a pretty stable system, really. The eustachian tube is connected to the back of the nasal passage. That's in the middle ear, so it helps equalize the air pressure between the outside world and the inner ear. It can get filled up with fluid sometimes, like when you get a cold or inflammation. The eustachian tube can become blocked, and that's how our ears feel a bit blocked, because they might not be draining any fluid, or you get infections inside the middle ear. Children sometimes suffer this, and they have grommets put in the eardrum, which is a small hole to help equalize the air pressure. So we move on to the next slide, which is a picture, a kind of diagram really of the cochlea. And you can see there that membrane at the front of the cochlea goes all the way back, and it has these sensory hair cells on this membrane. And they respond to different frequencies. In human hearing, we hear about 20 hertz, 20 cycles per second, 20 vibrations per second, to about 20,000 hertz, or 20 kilohertz, 20,000 vibrations per second. The lower frequencies obviously at one end, and the higher frequencies at the other end. But it's a bit like a piano keyboard, but the other way around on this diagram. So the high frequencies are at the front of the cochlear tube, if you like, and the low frequencies at the other end. So the front of the cochlea takes a pounding in your lifetime, really, of these vibrations coming into the fluid medium of the cochlea. So those vibrations go along there, and they disturb these sensory hair cells. As I say, the cochlear nerve sends a message to the auditory cortex. Now, when the amplitude or the vibrations of this fluid are very high or loud, if you like, the sensory hair cells on that membrane get flattened down. Imagine a field of wheat or barley in a strong wind or a storm, it flattens them down. And then normally 12, 24 hours, they stand back up again. Now, you know this has happened because you will get this temporary whistling or ringing in your head. It's not an actual sound. It's because those sensory hair cells are being temporarily damaged. Or your hearing would have gone muffled. This means those sensory hair cells aren't working. They're not sending the right messages to the brain. And again, normally they stand back up, happy days. But when you keep getting exposed to loud music or noise, or even a really loud noise on a few occasions, these sensory hair cells get so flattened down, they don't stand back up and they die off. And that's when you get noise or music-induced hearing loss. Now, normally with a broadband signal or noise, because of the resonant frequency of the ear canal, this is quite interesting, that every tube or space has a resonant frequency. And our ear canal has a resonant frequency around the 2 kilohertz sort of bandwidth, which, funnily enough, is in the middle of the vibrations that you can make from the human voice. So we're quite susceptible to responding to the sounds that we make as human beings, which is why we can't necessarily hear whales, or dogs can hear more high-pitched things. So our hearing has evolved around those sort of sounds, probably to respond to cries and calls from the human in alarm, or raising alarm, or responding to the cries of our children and babies and stuff like that. Now, the problem with this is that you will see that resonant frequency with noise damage or music damage, that it reflects in the damage in the cochlea. So you can see it starting about 1-2 kilohertz, but you normally see the damage about an octave above that resonant frequency, which is about 4 kilohertz. So with music-induced hearing loss, you will see a damage in people's hearing around, starting about 1, but more 2, but definitely a 4 kilohertz notch. And this is where you can tell from a hearing test that there's been some external source or damage. It's not hereditary. You see this notch, which is what I've got. And a lot of us in the music industry say, have you got the 4K notch? It's, yeah, we have, which is why we're all shouting at each other at parties or whatever. Now, the problem, especially with our language system and the sounds we make from the human voice, is that the consonant sounds, f, th, s, k, sounds, sit in this 246 kind of 8 kilohertz bandwidth, which is where you get that loss. So then I realized that's why I couldn't quite hear what people were saying when there's a lot of mid-frequency background noise or music. more so female voices or children's voices because they're slightly further up the bandwidth. So you could hear what the blokes were saying, but when the ladies were talking, and my theory is that a lot of this selective hearing kind of joke, really, but historically males worked in factories and loud working environments, and before the noise at work regulations wore no hearing protection at all, and most males, because at that time that's males were working in those kind of heavy industries, shipbuilding, mines, factories, post the industrial revolution, and probably I know children as well, those kind of heavy industries, steelworks and stuff like that. Most men, I reckon, suffered from noise induced hearing loss, and they couldn't actually hear properly in social situations. That's my theory. I don't know, but anyway. So yes, you see that damage there, which is a bit of a problem. And once that damage has been done, once those sensory hair cells there, you can see the ones actually on the right hand side are healthy ones, and the ones on the left, you can see the damage has been done, and they don't grow back. That's it.
Wow, that's so interesting to understand all of that. And now knowing that this needs to be an important thing in our music education. So for music teachers and musicians alike, what are some really important considerations for us to be making regarding safe sound exposure, and talking about things like choirs when we're in big groups and we're maybe in acoustic environments that might boost certain things, or for musical theatre students who might be in studios with lots of tap dancing, and that is really quite hard on the ear. What's your advice there?
I would say, first of all, it's about how loud it is and how long you're exposed. So I'm just going to share this slide here, if I may.
Yeah.
So this is the important thing, really. In terms of damage, or temporary or permanent, this is probably one of the most important things, is how loud is it and how long have you got? And now this is in line, or has been since 2006, is in line with the noise at work regulations, which applies to all industries and is pretty much the same in most statute, law and regulation across the world. And this is from tests as well on human beings about noise damage and damage to the cochlea. So at 85 decibels, you have a safe exposure time of 8 hours, which is a normal working day, which is actually the second action level in the noise at work regulations. Now, how mad is this? At 85 decibels, after that, if it's 85 decibels or louder, it's compulsory issue of hearing protection in the workplace. By law, you have to issue it, personal protective equipment. Now, most contemporary popular music is going to be louder than that. So just take a drum kit in a pop rock ensemble being played, you're 90 decibels up, probably 93, 95 decibels. Any contemporary music, normally to feel the music through conduction, it needs to be 94 to 97 decibels, which is why most concerts, front of house, they will have the sound pressure level at that loud. So you can feel the music. Nightclubs, electronic dance music, it'll at least be 97, if not 100 decibels. So it's a logarithmic of sound pressure level. If you increase the sound level by 3 dB, it's twice as loud. So you should half your exposure time. So if you go from 85 to 88, you've then got 4 hours, 88, 91, 2 hours, etc., etc. So when you get up to 94 to 97, your safe exposure time is about 1 hour, half an hour to 1 hour safely.
And that's got to be consistent noise, has it? Or
yeah.
So, for example, in a singing lesson, somebody isn't probably going to be belting at you for an hour non-stop. So we're probably going to be okay in that.
Yeah, I would say so. If you were singing more in an ensemble situation and there were amplified music, or it could be a drumming band, or you were singing with acoustic instruments as well. But I would say you can measure. You can download apps. They wouldn't be like a formal noise assessment, but it may be worth, in a rehearsal or whatever, just actually downloading some of these apps and just putting it on and just seeing what the decibel level is. Obviously, if there's percussion as well, there could be impact sounds. Some of those impact sounds could be over, 100 dB, but that's just a kind of impact thing. And I think for me, playing drums as a child and then standing next to drummers as a bass player, that was probably one of the problems for me, for sure.
You say that your exposure time is an hour at a particular stage.
Yeah.
How long do you have to then wait before you can go and expose yourself again to that level. So I'm just thinking about giggers who might then,
I mean, they say about giving your ears a rest, but again, it's about how loud it is. So it's really working out how loud it is and then how long you need to give your ears a break. But yeah, they say if you were 85 decibels, that's 8 hours exposure. You should at least have another 8 hours before you, so you could double that every time. Yeah, it's about your dose. And this is the other thing, because obviously we live in a very noisy world and a lot of people use portable music devices, headphones, earphones. So that goes in your daily dose, really. More than ever before, the human ear is not meant to deal with this loudness. What's the loudest thing in nature? And you would only respond to that because it was so loud, or someone shouted at you, or a wild animal roared at you. It would induce this fight or flight mechanism, and you get the adrenaline going. We haven't the human ear hasn't really evolved to cope with the noisy world that we live in. And so many people listen to music and streaming stuff through headphones. We're consuming this amplified sound all the time. And recreational listening is a major part of popular culture, which again, why is it not in the curriculum in music education? It's crazy. Drug awareness, sex education, online security, cyber security are taught mainstream in primary schools, I think. 1.1 billion young people between the ages of 13 and 25 are suffering from music-induced hearing loss. And those stats from the World Health Organization are quite old now. 40% of those from amplified music and sounds at music venues, and the rest of them from portable music devices. So it's a major problem. The audiologists in the world are rubbing their hands because, again, people are going deaf and hearing aids are very expensive and the margins are very good for selling hearing aids. But anyway, that's another story.
Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow. Can we get on to the in-ear monitors and the earplugs, and how this is going to help us with maintaining an ear health that will see us through in our careers? Yeah. So what are the differences between in-ear monitors and earplugs?
So earplugs block out sound, but not all earplugs are the same, basically. And for musicians, you want to hear the sound. So foam earplugs are not great. Would you give a cheap auditory block to a musician? No, of course you wouldn't. It blocks the auditory canal. And also a lot of singers would get the occlusion effect, which I'll talk about in a moment. Yeah. And also they block out a lot of the mids and high frequencies. So there's a loss of clarity and musical enjoyment. So really what you need is a high fidelity attenuating or ambient hearing protection, so you can still hear the music, still hear who you're singing along with or whatever, but it turns it down. And I don't want to scare people. This is not like you must wear earplugs, otherwise you are going to go deaf. It's about being aware of the environments you're working in. But also I would say, as a musician, protecting your ears when you're out in noisy places in the city or whatever, just be aware of other noises that could damage your hearing. Normally with earplugs, there's two different types: a generic fit earplug, which fits well. 2/3 of people on the planet will not fit a generic earphone or earplug properly. You won't get the proper seal, which is why they keep falling out, or to get the good sound you have to push them in, as some of you may know. So really, to guarantee the level of protection, you really need to go have a custom earpiece.
And just to see those two pictures side by side, they're so different.
Yeah. So they're custom molded are molded for your ears. As I said, the cartilage of everybody's completely different. You're not even symmetrical. One ear canal will be larger than the other slightly. The shape of the ear canal follows a similar sort of shape for everybody, but everybody's different. So the only way you can guarantee the fit of an earplug to do what it's supposed to do, protect you and sound good, if you like, is to have a custom molded piece. And the same with earphones as well, which kind of links with the in-ear monitors. So yeah, these have attenuating filters, and these are the ACS filters that they turn the volume down. So they're not to affect the frequencies of the music, but just reduces the sound pressure levels. They are magic. It was a membrane technology basically, but they are quite magic how they do it. But the air can move both ways with our hearing protection. Other manufacturers do it with a very crude and very cheap way. They have a small little grommet or washer with a big hole in it to let in more sound, strangely enough, and a smaller hole to let in less sound. But they don't sound the same as a linear attenuating filter like ours. It's a bit more high tech, really. So it reduces the sound. So there we go. Yeah, the advantages are obviously they attenuate, they turn it down, they don't block out, better frequency response, they sound better, less occlusion, like that, just feeling like you've got your finger stuck in your ears. Better communication, you can talk to people while you've got them in. So socially, recreationally, fantastic. Go to a pub or a bar, order a drink, leave them in, have a chat while you're listening to the music. I say music without the muffle. Yeah, so you can hear the music, be in touch with your environment, protect your hearing, and increase your exposure time. Simple, really.
Right.
So yeah, custom made, bespoke, medical grade silicon. But we have a range of different filters for different working environments. So with singers, you don't really want to attenuate or block the ear canal too much because you get this occlusion effect. Now, some singers like this, or we do this when you're trying to get a 2-part, 3-part, 4-part harmony. You might stick your finger in your ear, one
Or
ear.
if you're Mariah Carey.
Yeah, exactly. But normally, if you block both ears, you will hear more of the low frequency energy through conduction through your head, the vibrations, and that low frequency energy doesn't go out through the ears. So it can affect people's intonation when you're singing, can be a bit of a problem. So for us, really, we wouldn't recommend much above really 17 maximum. This is the level of decibel cut, basically. This is how much it's turning it down in decibels. So we would probably recommend a 10 or a 15. Now, for example, if it's 100 decibels in a club or on a stage or music that is that loud, 15 decibels would reduce it to 85. So you've gone from 15 minutes at 100 decibels to 8 hours just with 15 dB reduction.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's pretty simple, really. And we're very proud, actually, of the Pro 17, which has an almost flat frequency response, which has been hailed as the most natural sounding earplug in the world, which is nice. But I think for singers, 10, 15 is in contemporary popular loud situation, the loud musical environments is all you really want to go for. Plus, you can have them different colors if you want your name on them.
What sort of performing artist is likely going to be wearing the in-ear monitor? Because is it a case of this is more for the contemporary loud gigs, or are we thinking maybe classical singers as well?
More contemporary popular music, yeah. But we're seeing a massive increase in ear monitoring in many ways. Choirs, the worship choirs on stage, but they've probably got drums and bass and guitars as well. But maybe we'll talk about the silent stage setup in a minute. But sometimes, so all of the choir can hear the monitor mix playing along with other instruments or whatever, they would be wearing in-ear monitors. So it's, yeah, I would say more so in popular music, but we're seeing, as we saw at the proms as well, orchestras playing stuff with singers and classical instruments as well. There's a bit of a crossover now. If there needs to be monitoring on stage for everybody to hear themselves and for the singers to hear the music they're playing along with, they are going over to in-ear monitors because you're protecting your ears as well, because the monitor mix, you have it the level, you can have it at a lower level and you can hear everything instead of relying on everything acoustically. But it does really depend on the situation of the genre of music and the repertoire that's being played, for sure. Probably less so in classical. We're not seeing it in opera really at the moment, for example. I would say more contemporary popular music, for sure.
Is that because the classical is just not as loud?
It's not as loud. I'm not saying that is it. We do work with the Royal Opera House. That's another story. But yeah, normally they acoustically they can hear it. It's fine, but it depends on the production. Theatre shows, some are going over to in-ear monitors because they're having to hear the orchestra and the band and stuff like that. And then sometimes they're hearing cues for different things through their in-ears as well. But yeah, with classical music, the dynamics change as well, obviously, with classical music. So it's not constantly one level loud all the time. But we are seeing an increase in people going over to in-ear monitors in many ways, and the affordability of all the other equipment as well. It's not just for the professional stage shows, it's wedding bands, function bands, things like that. But it depends on the setup, the genre, and the repertoire.
And can you tell us about this setup? What does having in-ear monitors do to how other things are set up on stage, and like sound checks and things?
Yeah. Okay. So this, I'm going to share my screen again. Let's just go through this. What are in-ear monitors? They're earphones that you hear more so in amplified music setups. You hear the band and yourself coming back through some earphones through what we call a monitor mix. And these are just glorified earphones. Actually, my boss was involved in the early days with Stevie Wonder, actually, when they couldn't hear themselves on stage properly. And they started sending a mix of the rest of the band and their own voice that's gone through the microphone back into their ears. And they were wearing like Sony Walkman little headphones. Actually, this is a true story, that it was sent wirelessly via an FM channel, FM signal, like a radio. So you could actually tune in and hear Stevie Wonder's monitor mix on an FM radio. Anyway, they wanted to get away from wearing headphones because it doesn't look very good when you're wearing headphones on the stage. So they wanted earphones, but then obviously little earphones didn't sound that good because of the technology. They kept falling out. So actually Andy was involved, ex-musician, damaged his hearing. He set up ACS. He retrained as an audiologist. And he was doing custom molds. So it was making it so you got better isolation, so you could hear your monitor mix better, and they didn't fall out on stage, and they were quite discreet. So yeah, so that's the difference between universal fit, which is on the left-hand side. There's a picture there of some in-ear monitors, earphones, if you like. Universal fit with a universal earbud, or on the right-hand side with the microphone there, they're custom molded. So some examples there, Shure, these some of our endorsees, guys from Keen. We look after everybody pretty much, and you probably see them on the telly with these things in their ears. So more so when there's amplified music being delivered, that this is the normal setup, looking side on stage. Actually, so you'd be standing stage right, actually looking this way across the stage. So the front of house is on the right hand side. So the sound goes through microphones, it goes through a sound system, and it's projected into the audience so they can hear. But the sound on stage is very different to what you hear in the auditorium. So the artists and musicians on stage have what we call backline, which is the amplifiers for the musical instruments, bass, guitar, whatever. And they have wedge monitors or fold back monitors or monitor speakers, so they can hear themselves and the other instruments on stage. And it can be very loud. And this is how I've pretty much damaged my hearing, because that sound on stage is so loud. And you've got maybe a drum kit as well. Mid-90s, 100 dBs is quite common on stage. But also when you move around, and also gig to gig, concert to concert, different venues, the monitor mix can be a nightmare, as many of you may know. And getting the same sound on stage as a musician is paramount to not being able to hear your instrument properly or hear yourself singing because it's so loud. It's a nightmare. So this is where the in-ear monitoring started, but it had to be quite high-end bands, because of bands that were signed to record labels that had money really to have an in-ear monitoring system. But the culture's changing in this setup because of the cost, really, but also people are seeing the advantages of it. So that's the standard system. So what you have within an in-ear monitoring system is you get rid of all of those speakers on the stage, which also on bigger stages, as you moved around the stage, you'd hear different things. So it was a bit of a nightmare. If you moved away from your bass amp, for me, if I was on a festival stage or whatever, you couldn't really hear yourself properly. So it was a bit of a nightmare. So with an in-ear monitor system, which is normally they're a wireless system, is that the sound is sent to your earphones, your in-ear monitors, and you don't have these speakers on the stage. So the monitor mix is sent bespoke for you. You can have exactly what you want, a bit of your own voice. I want more bass, or I don't want more bass, or I want guitar, I want the keyboards, or whatever you want. You can have that in your mix, which is fantastic. And anywhere you go on the stage as you're walking around, because it's transmitted to you wirelessly, you will hear the same mix. Fantastic. So you have to have a system like this, which is a wireless belt pack, which transmits the sound to your belt pack that you wear, basically. So yeah, it goes through the mixing desk, if you like, and it's transmitted there to the wireless belt packs, and your in-ear monitors are plugged into that, or your earphones are plugged into that, and you hear your monitor mix. So that's the system. Or you can do it where you are hardwired, where the sound, your monitor mix, more so people that are standing in one position, sometimes with backing vocalists, sometimes with drummers that are not moving around the stage. This will go to a little headphone amplifier clipped onto themselves, and then they're plugged their in-ear monitors into that. And that's another way. That's another way of doing it. But yeah. So you'd have a little headphone amp, very simple. These are very cheap, but obviously normally supplied by a venue or tech crew. There's two different types of in-ear monitors. So there's the kind of like the full isolation, whether that's the universals normally block the whole ear canal, or customs do. But to get rid of the occlusion effects, you have to vent to get rid of this low frequency energy in the auditory canal. When you block with an earphone, the bone conducted sound stays in the ear canal. This is why you get the occlusion effect. So in order to get rid of this, what you should try and do is to vent or have a hole that lets some of the sound come in and out of the ear canal naturally. But the problem with this is with earphones, as soon as you vent a closed speaker system, you lose a lot of the low frequency energy as well, and they sound really thin and you don't get any bass in your monitor mix. It's been a problem for years with in-ear monitor companies. So what we did was, actually years ago, we built in microphones into the in-ear monitors, which was a bit of a faff, but it solved the problem of the occlusion effect and stuff. So you could have a bit of ambient awareness from your in-ear monitors, almost like a hearing aid, really, and in-ear monitors. Not really practical because you have to wear another belt pack. So we created an ambient series, a vented in-ear monitor that has a special filter in it that protects your ears, reduces the sound level, protects your ears, but you can hear a bit of your on-stage sound, which is great for communication, hear other acoustic instruments better, but also you can talk to other people without taking your ears out, but also let some of that low frequency occlusion effect out of the in-ear monitor as well to help cancel it. So these have been fantastic. Nearly all singers will go for a vented ambient in-ear monitor. So that's something I will recommend. Is if you're a singer in any type of music, I would say there are some heavy metal bands, singers that don't want to hear anything and they just want to hear their monitor mix. Slightly different way of singing maybe. But most singers, I would say 99% of singers will go for a vented ambient system like this.
Is there a difference between an attenuated in-ear and a vented in-ear, or are they the same?
The vented in-ear, some of them just have a hole in it, so they wouldn't have any protection. They would let all the sound out, but they would sound really thin. They wouldn't have a lot of low bass in them, really, but they wouldn't protect you. If you want some protection on stage, we do 3 different types of filters for ours: a 10 decibel, 17, or a 24. Most singers will go for a 10. 10 decibels is a kind of that threshold I said of 10 to 15, then you're going to start getting that occlusion effect. So 10 decibels is the sweet spot. But again, if you're on stage and it's 95, it's going to reduce it to 85. So you've gone from a couple of hours to 8 hours just with 10 decibel attenuation.
Great. You showed us a picture just now of some of the artists that are using the in-ears that you create there at ACS. Some people from Keen. Can you tell us any other artists that we might have heard of who are using these?
Her.
Ray.
That was a good link, wasn't it? Yeah. Ray, she's great. All of her band use our stuff as well. We've just signed another deal with her, actually, endorsement. But I love her. It's great that we get people that I actually like their music as well. But we look after many different people, from Lulu to all sorts of people. But I'll tell you, another lovely lady is DC Lee, who was with Wham and the Style Council. She's just launched her career again, a new album. And she's just gone over to in-ears, which is a completely new experience for her. She's done everything through normal kind of speakers and stuff like that. She's on tour at the moment. Actually, I'm going to see her on Sunday in Bristol. I sat in with their rehearsals, getting her used to using in-ear monitors because it was a completely different way of working. She was normally in a live band situation. She's completely converted because she could hear herself properly. She liked the ambient thing. She could still have some sort of ambient awareness. On stage communication, especially for a lead singer, was fantastic.
You mentioned that you were helping DC Lee with the in-ear monitors when she started out using them. So is there anything that our singing teachers can do to help our singers get used to them in a singing lesson, maybe? Or is it really have
Yeah.
to do it on stage?
I would do it, yeah, obviously do it in rehearsals. Yeah. If you've been used to doing things not on in-ear monitors, it can be a bit strange, to be honest, to start off with. But then when you realize that, like, how well you can hear everything, like a good quality stereo mix of everything, you start listening to the music and you can hear your voice as well. It's a revelation. It's game changing. If I could go back 35 plus years and do it all again, in-ear monitors all day long, I would have been wearing something like this, because I did come out of retirement and we were using in-ear monitors, and it was obviously because I was working for the company, so that was quite a good one. And it was like, oh my god, I'd never go back to having a massive amplifier or anything like that. I could hear myself. I was doing BVs as well, so I could hear myself singing. Every gig, the mix was exactly the same. Yeah, amazing. And we're seeing that. We just did the drum show this weekend, seeing how many musicians are, well, that was mainly for drummers, but seeing how many more musicians year on are going over to in-ear monitors and protecting your hearing at the same time.
Yeah. And this is really the work that you're striving to share through Musicians Health Scheme. So can you tell us how you're playing a part in that, how you continue to work with them?
Yeah, this is an ongoing scheme funded by an absolutely brilliant charity called Help Musicians UK, supporting musicians in various things, from financial support for various different things, mental health support, and hearing health. There's a certain criteria. You have to have most of your income has to come from making music as a musician. But it's fairly easy to get onto the scheme. And there's a one-off payment of £50. But if you're in the Musicians Union, God bless the MU, it's 25% discount. And if you're in the Incorporated Society of Musicians, ISM as well, that's if you're a member of those organisations, you get a reduction. So you get an audiological assessment and checkup from a specialist musicians hearing services. That's worth £100. You get a set of custom-made ACS Pro Series earplugs worth £149. Expert advice and referral routes for next steps to manage any problems you've got with tinnitus or whatever. Options on earwax removal as well. It's a great scheme. Basically, if you work in music professionally, or even semi-professionally, there's no excuse now. Personally, I'm quite proud of this, because that mission and banging on doors and making myself really unpopular in the music industry for a while, it has paid off. And this scheme is still running, and I hope it still does, because if you're serious about sound and you want to work in music, if your ears don't work, then neither do you. Music-induced hearing loss and music-induced tinnitus is 100% preventable. That's either by managing your exposure or protecting yourself correctly. That's it.
And can you just tell us what sort of price we might be looking for at buying a pair of the ACS Bespoke in-ears?
So there's two really in the range of whether you go vented or non-vented. So I would recommend vented, which is we call them the ambient series. So you can see here it says ambient, but there's different speaker configurations. It's how many speakers you have in the ear. I didn't really talk about this. Getting a bit technical, the more speakers you have in your in-ear monitors doesn't necessarily make them better. All I would say is that, like most speakers, you have two speakers, you have a woofer and a tweeter. So to get a high fidelity experience, you really need two speakers, which is what ours have. So the entry level one is the Evoke 2. It's £299. However, if you work in education, we give you a 20% discount, which is nice. And then moving up from that, more the sort of pro would be the Engage, which is two split drivers, which in terms of frequency response, are slightly a bit more versatile. Ones that a lot of singers go for is the Evolve, which is a 3-driver system. Any type of music you're listening to, the monitor mix, you will get a great monitor mix. They're a good all-rounder. They would be £599. Or we do a 5-driver system, which has obviously more speakers than in the low frequency bandwidth, mainly for drummers, bass players, or DJs that want more bass in their mix. So these speakers can cope with that a little bit better without any harmonic distortion in the other bandwidth kind of thing. But I would say really any of these would be good. The Evolve, the Engage, or the Ambient. Depends what your budget is really. But yeah, a lot of singers go for the Evoke 2 or the Engage. You can talk to our customer service team or one of my pro audio sales managers if you want to discuss your requirements in more detail. Tell us what you do, what sort of genre of music you're doing, and we can advise you accordingly. We're about protecting people's hearing and giving people the right solution. We're not just trying to sell, yeah, you must buy the top of the range one. It's 900 quid. Do you know what I mean? If that's not going to suit you, then we would advise on another product.
Can you just tell us what that website is so that our listeners can log on when they're at home?
acscustom.com. That's it. If you just put acscustom.com, you can put /UK. Obviously, this is for the UK. But if you are in other parts of the world, you click on how to buy and then go international. And then there's a map of the world. We're not in Greenland, unfortunately, which is a shame because I'd love to go. But yeah, pretty much everywhere else in the world, you can buy through one of our dealers. These people are lovely down in Melbourne. So yeah, EarLab, just contact one of our local distributors. We've got people in Florida and what have you. But obviously, it's a slightly different arrangement in terms of getting your ear molds done, because we didn't talk about that, which maybe I should actually just touch on in terms of custom, if that's all right, is that you would have to have an ear impression taken, a mold of your ear. Really simple process. We inspect your ears. This is what the Musicians Hearing Health Scheme would do for your earplugs. We would do for in-ear monitors. And then a 2-part medical silicone is gently syringed into the ear after the ear is safely blocked. And this goes hard. We create a model of your ear, and then we create a 3D model of your ear, and then keep that on file and 3D print that to make a cast to actually then make the actual earplug. If you're in the UK, it's really easy because our new website will actually tell you where the nearest audiologist is to get your ear impressions done. So you can just type in your postcode, whatever that may be. It's 161 TG, say, for example, and then that will tell you the audiologist. So when you buy online and they accept our ACS vouchers, Boots Hearing Care or the Hearing Care Partnerships, 2 of our partners, you buy online, we send you via email a voucher free of charge to you. You just phone the audiologist up, book an appointment, they check your ears, take the ear impression and send the ear impressions to us. Simple as that. So in the UK, it's really easy. Other parts of the world, the distributor or the ACS rep would tell you how to get your ear impressions done. In the UK as well, if we've got a band or an orchestra, I send one of my technicians out to meet them. We personally meet them and take their ear molds.
Thank you so much for giving us all of this information on our ears, how it works, how we can keep them healthy, your products. It's been really great to learn from you. So just remind us again of your website.
acscustom.com for your hearing protection and ear monitor needs. If you're serious about sound, play safe now so you can still hear tomorrow.
Yeah, brilliant. Jono Heale, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And UK listeners, Jono has a gift for you. So if you want to bag yourself a 15% discount off of custom hearing protection and in-ear monitors, then just use the code BAST15. That's BAST15. You're welcome.